The doctor wrapped a fake cast around my leg and looked at me one last time. Are you sure you want to do this? I nodded. I wasn't testing whether my leg could heal. I was testing whether the woman I planned to marry actually loved me. 40 minutes later, my police fiancée walked into the hospital room. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask if I was okay. The first thing she asked was, "How long before you can walk again?" That's when I knew something inside our relationship had already died. I stared at her, searching for some sign that she was simply overwhelmed. "Hello to you too," I said. Madison crossed her arms. "I'm serious, Logan." "So am I." She looked at the cast. "How bad is it?" Before I could answer, Dr. Noah Bennett walked in carrying a clipboard. He glanced at me briefly, then focused on Madison. "Mr. Carter's injuries appear significant." Madison frowned. "What does that mean?" Noah answered calmly. "He'll need several weeks before putting weight on this leg." She let out a long breath. Not of relief, of frustration. Several weeks. I noticed it immediately. Noah noticed it too. "Is there permanent damage?" Madison asked. "We won't know for a while." She rubbed her forehead. "This couldn't have happened at a worse time." I blinked. "Really?" She looked at me. "You know how busy work is. I almost died on my motorcycle." "I know, but we got ongoing investigations." I laughed quietly. "You make it sound like I scheduled the accident." Her expression didn't change. "I'm just saying the timing is terrible." Noah looked at me. "I'll give you both a minute." After he left, silence filled the room. Madison checked her phone. Again and again. I finally asked, "Are you expecting someone?" "No." Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Her face softened in a way it hadn't since she entered my room. She answered immediately. "Hey." I watched her carefully. "No, it's okay." A small smile appeared. "I'm still at the hospital." She listened. "Relax." Another pause. "I'll come over." She hung up. I already knew who had called. Still, I asked, "Tyler?" She hesitated. "Yeah." "What happened?" "He needs help finishing paperwork." I stared at her. "Paperwork?" "He just started." "So your rookie partner can't complete paperwork without you?" She sighed. "You don't understand." "Help me understand." "He made mistakes. So, if I don't help him, he'll get written up." I looked at the cast on my leg. "And I'm supposed to sit here alone." "It's only for a little while." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I'm your fiancé." "I know. I was in an accident." "I know. You've been here less than 10 minutes." She looked uncomfortable. "I'll come back later tonight." I asked quietly, "Would you leave if the injury were real?" She frowned. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make me feel guilty." I laughed bitterly. "I don't think I'm the one doing that." She grabbed her jacket. "I have to go." I watched her walk toward the door. She stopped briefly. "I'll call you." Then she left. The room became painfully quiet. A few seconds later, Noah returned. He looked toward the empty doorway. "She already left?" I nodded. "For paperwork?" He raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" "Apparently." He sat beside the bed. "I don't usually interfere in relationships. But if Emily had found me in a hospital after an accident, I'd have needed security to make her leave." I smiled faintly. "That's because she loves you." He looked at me with sympathy. "I thought Madison loved me too." Noah didn't answer. He didn't need to. Around 8 that evening, the nurses encouraged me to walk a little with crutches. Since my injury wasn't real, I moved carefully enough to avoid drawing attention, but easily enough to keep up appearances. I wandered toward the hospital cafe. Halfway there, I heard 2 nurses talking. "Did you see Officer Brooks?" "The police officer?" "Yeah." "I thought she left with another officer." I slowed my pace. "Young guy. Tall. Always smiling." "What's his name?" "Tyler, I think." My stomach tightened. I returned quietly to my room. Maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe she really was helping him. Maybe. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A notification from social media. Someone I barely knew had uploaded several photos from a downtown restaurant. I almost ignored them. Then I saw a familiar police uniform. I opened the post. There she was, Madison, sitting across from Tyler. Neither of them wore their duty jackets anymore. The table held candles, half-finished meals, dessert. In one picture, Tyler was laughing while Madison reached across the table and brushed something from his shoulder. The caption read, "Always great running into our city's finest. Hope date night goes well." Date night. I immediately called Madison. She answered after several rings. Hey, where are you? At the station. I looked at the photographs again. Working overtime? Yeah. You sure? Silence. I told you. I took a slow breath. I just saw photos of you having dinner with Tyler. Nothing. Finally, she spoke. It wasn't dinner. What was it? We grabbed food after work. You told me you were still working. We were discussing cases. In a restaurant. It was more convenient. I closed my eyes. Madison. What? You lied. It wasn't a lie. It was. She sounded irritated. I don't have time for this conversation. I looked around the empty hospital room. I noticed. She sighed. We'll talk tomorrow. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly. Noah knocked gently before entering. Everything okay? I turned the screen toward him. He looked at the photographs without speaking, and he looked back at me. I'm sorry. I swallowed hard. So am I. For the first time since wrapping that fake cast around my leg, I realized the experiment wasn't revealing whether Madison loved me. It was revealing how long I'd been refusing to see the truth. And somehow, that hurt far more than any real broken bone ever could. The fake cast became the most honest thing in my life. Everyone believed my leg was broken. Nobody realized my heart was the real injury. 3 days passed. Madison visited only once. She stayed for 12 minutes. I counted. She stood beside my bed, scrolling through messages while I tried to tell her about physical therapy. I'm glad you're improving, she said without looking up. I haven't even started rehab. You weren't listening. She sighed and slipped her phone into her pocket. I'm just exhausted. From work? Obviously. Before I could answer, her phone buzzed again. She smiled. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen directed at me in weeks. Tyler, I asked. She hesitated. Yeah. What does he need now? He has questions about tomorrow's patrol schedule. I laughed quietly. Your rookie partner can't survive a day without you. He's still learning. So am I. She frowned. What does that mean? I'm learning where I rank in your life. She looked away. Don't start. I'm lying in a hospital bed. I said don't start. The silence between us lasted several seconds. Finally, she picked up her jacket. I have to go. You've been here 12 minutes. I have responsibilities. I looked directly into her eyes. So did I. She opened the door. We'll talk later. The room became quiet again. Emma Collins, one of the nurses assigned to my floor, stepped inside, carrying fresh medication. She glanced toward the hallway. Your fiancé? I nodded. She seems busy. That's one way to describe it. Emma adjusted my blanket. My husband spent 2 nights sleeping in that chair after my appendix surgery. She smiled softly. I finally had to force him to go home. I looked at the empty visitor's chair beside my bed. No one's tried to steal that one. She hesitated. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. I know. She checked my chart. I just wish people loved each other better. After she left, I stared at the ceiling. Maybe that was the simplest explanation. Madison hadn't stopped loving me overnight. Maybe she'd stopped a long time ago. I just hadn't noticed. That evening, Noah arrived carrying a laptop. I've got something. I sat up carefully. What happened? You remember asking me to keep an eye on anything unusual? I nodded. He opened the computer. I noticed repeated financial notifications while your phone was charging yesterday. I frowned. You looked through my phone? He shook his head immediately. No. They kept appearing on the lock screen. So I checked after asking your permission. I remembered. I had barely been paying attention. What did you find? He turned the screen toward me. Several banking alerts filled the display. Large transfers. Investment confirmations. Account withdrawals. My stomach tightened. Those account numbers. They're your joint savings. I stared silently. Our wedding account. Noah nodded. I thought maybe you already knew. I didn't. I opened the banking application. Transaction after transaction appeared. Thousands of dollars. Then tens of thousands. Finally, one transfer made my heart stop. Nearly every dollar we had saved for our wedding was gone. I whispered, who authorized this? Noah looked uncomfortable. The electronic approval lists Madison. I felt sick. She never mentioned any investment. There's more. He opened another document. The receiving company had a name I'd never heard before. I searched it online. A tiny startup, barely 6 months old. 3 listed employees. One registered investor. Tyler Ross. I looked at Noah. No, I'm afraid so. I leaned back against the pillow. She invested our wedding savings. He nodded slowly. Into Tyler's business. Neither of us spoke. The silence said enough. Later that afternoon, Captain Rachel Stone knocked on my hospital room door. I knew her well. She had attended our engagement party. Logan. Captain. She smiled politely. How's the leg? Getting there. She looked around. Madison isn't here? No. I thought she'd be visiting. I forced a smile. Work keeps her busy. Rachel's expression changed slightly. Too busy. I looked at her carefully. What do you mean? She hesitated. I probably shouldn't say. Please. She sighed. She's been requesting schedule changes. Why? So she can stay assigned with Tyler. I felt my chest tighten. I thought partners rotated. They usually do. Rachel folded her arms. I've denied 3 requests already. Did she tell you why? No. Rachel looked genuinely concerned. I assumed she wanted to support a new officer. She paused. Now I'm not so sure. After she left, I couldn't stop thinking about her words. Requesting schedule changes. Choosing Tyler. Again and again. That evening, Emma returned to check my vitals. She immediately noticed my expression. Bad news. I handed her the tablet, showing the investment records. She quietly read everything, then looked back at me. I've seen families survive cancer. I've seen them survive bankruptcy. She placed the tablet down gently. But secrets? She shook her head. They're different. My phone buzzed. A message from Noah. Check your email. I opened it immediately. One attachment. Hospital security had forwarded surveillance footage Noah requested after hearing rumors from one of the parking attendants. The timestamp showed 10:47 p.m. Not the hospital. A downtown residential building. Luxury apartments. The video quality was crystal clear. A black SUV pulled into the underground garage. Madison stepped out first. Tyler followed a moment later. They laughed about something. She lightly punched his shoulder. He opened the building door for her. Then, without hesitation, they disappeared inside together. The timestamp continued. 11:08 p.m. 11:43 p.m. 12:26 a.m. Neither of them came back out. The recording ended. I replayed it once. Then again, not because I hoped I had misunderstood, because I desperately wished I had. My fake cast had exposed far more than I ever intended. It hadn't just shown me where I stood in Madison's priorities. It had uncovered lies, hidden money, and late-night meetings she never thought I'd discover. As I closed the laptop, one painful truth settled in my mind. Whatever Madison and Tyler were building together, they had already begun tearing apart everything she and I were supposed to build together. The morning I removed the fake cast, my leg felt perfectly normal. My heart didn't. I sat on the edge of the hospital bed, staring at the white plaster lying across my lap. For weeks it had been my disguise. Now it had become a reminder. I hadn't pretended to be injured because I wanted to trap Madison. I had wanted reassurance. Instead, I found lies. Noah walked into the room carrying discharge papers. He looked at the cast and smiled faintly. So, you ready to stop acting? I nodded. I think I've seen enough. He leaned against the wall. You sure? No. I laughed bitterly. But I'm ready anyway. He handed me my clothes. I'll miss having a patient who could walk better than I could. Don't get used to it. As I changed, he grew serious. Logan. What? Whatever comes next. I know. It won't be easy. I stopped expecting easy a long time ago. After leaving the hospital through a side entrance, I didn't go home. I drove straight to Captain Rachel Stone's office. She closed the door behind me. I've been expecting you. You knew I'd come. She nodded. I also knew you'd eventually stop pretending. I smiled weakly. The cast wasn't convincing. It was. She folded her arms. But your eyes weren't. I sat across from her. I need the truth. Rachel looked toward the window before answering. I can only tell you what I can legally discuss. I understand. She opened a locked drawer and removed a thin file. This doesn't leave the room. I nodded. She slid it across the desk. Tyler Ross is under internal investigation. I stared at her. For what? Accepting bribes. The words echoed in my mind. Bribes? She nodded. We've received reports that confidential police information has been reaching organized criminals. I looked down at the file. You think Tyler is responsible? We have reason to. What about Madison? Rachel sighed. She refuses to believe it. I closed the folder. Does she know he's under investigation? Yes. And she insists everyone's targeting him because he's young. I couldn't stop shaking my head. That's exactly what she'd say. Rachel leaned forward. Logan, I've known Madison for years. So have I. She's making terrible decisions. I know, but I still don't believe she's corrupt. I looked at her. You think she's being manipulated? I do. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every traffic light gave me another chance to think. Every mile forced another painful question. How many warnings had I ignored? That evening, Noah arrived carrying another laptop. You asked me to dig deeper. I did. I found more. He placed the computer on my kitchen table. Bank statements appeared first. Transfers, withdrawals, payments. Each one connected to accounts Tyler controlled directly or indirectly. My stomach tightened. He never had this kind of money. He still doesn't. Noah clicked another document. Someone else funded these accounts. I frowned. Who? We're still tracing them. He opened another folder. Phone records. Hundreds of messages. Some deleted. Most recovered. I began reading. Don't tell Logan. He asked too many questions. Transfer the money tomorrow. I'll explain later. Trust me. Another message made my chest ache. You're the only person who believes in me. Madison had sent it. I closed my eyes. I don't recognize this woman. Noah remained silent. Sometimes silence showed more compassion than words. He opened one final video. Security footage. Different location. Different night. Tyler met two men outside an abandoned warehouse. One handed him a thick envelope. Tyler slipped it into his jacket. Then he looked around nervously before driving away. I whispered, that's a payoff. It appears to be. Can police use this? If they verify the chain of evidence. I leaned back. This is bigger than us. It is. My phone rang. Madison. I answered. Hello. Where are you? Home. You left the hospital without telling me. You didn't visit. Silence. Finally, she asked, how's your leg? It's healing. Good. Another pause. I need to ask you something. Go ahead. Have you been talking to Rachel? I froze. Why? Just answer. I have. Her voice hardened. She's lying about Tyler. Is she? Yes. How do you know? Because I know him. I looked at the surveillance footage still paused on my laptop. Do you? What does that mean? It means maybe you know the version he wants you to know. She became angry immediately. I won't listen to people attacking him. What if they're telling the truth? They aren't. You sound very certain. I am. I asked quietly. When was the last time you were this certain about us? She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered, you're changing. No. I looked at the recovered messages again. I'm finally paying attention. She ended the call. I set the phone down. Noah watched me carefully. What now? I stood and walked toward the window. The city lights stretched across the darkness. Somewhere out there, Madison still believed Tyler deserved her loyalty. Somewhere out there, Tyler believed nobody would ever discover what he had been doing. They were both wrong. I turned back toward Noah. I spent weeks pretending to be injured because I wanted to know whether my relationship could survive a crisis. And I found something much worse. He nodded. Corruption. Exactly. I picked up the folder Rachel had given me. Then the bank records. Then the recovered messages. Finally, I looked at the surveillance video one more time. This isn't private anymore. Noah understood immediately. You want to expose everything. I have to. Once you do, I know. There won't be any going back. I took a deep breath. I stopped pretending today. I looked at every piece of evidence spread across my table. The fake injury had uncovered betrayal. The betrayal had uncovered deception. And the deception had uncovered corruption inside the very department sworn to protect people. The truth no longer belonged only to me. It belonged to everyone who trusted the badge Madison wore. And I was done protecting lies that were never mine to carry. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within 48 hours of submitting the evidence, Internal Affairs sealed Tyler's office, seized department computers, and suspended him from active duty. The police station that had once felt untouchable suddenly became a place filled with whispered conversations and nervous faces. I stood outside the building with Noah. "You ready?" he asked. "I don't think anyone is." He nodded. "Fair enough." An investigator opened the door. "Mr. Carter? That's me. They're ready for your statement." I followed him into a conference room where Captain Rachel Stone was already waiting. She gave me a small nod. "Thank you for coming. I just want the truth." "So do we." Across the table sat 3 internal affairs investigators. One of them switched on a recorder. "Please state your name." "Logan Carter." The questions began. I explained the fake motorcycle accident, the hospital stay, Madison's behavior, the hidden investment, the surveillance footage, the recovered messages. Nobody interrupted. They simply listened. When I finished, one investigator looked at Rachel. "This aligns with the financial evidence." Rachel nodded. "It also matches witness statements." Another investigator sighed. "We'll bring Officer Brooks in next." An hour later, I waited outside while Madison entered the room. She looked surprised to see me. "You reported him?" "I reported the truth." She stared at me. "You destroyed everything." I answered quietly. "No, Tyler did." She shook her head. "You don't understand." "I understand more than you think." The door opened. "Officer Brooks." She walked inside without another word. I remained in the hallway. Noah joined me, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "How's it going?" "I don't know." He handed me a cup. "Whatever happens now isn't your fault." I looked at the floor. I wished that made it easier. Several hours passed. Investigators questioned everyone connected to Tyler. Late that afternoon, another door opened. 2 officers escorted Tyler into a separate interview room. He looked nervous for the first time since I had met him. Rachel quietly approached me. "They found additional bank transfers. From the warehouse payments?" She nodded. "And more." I frowned. "What now?" "He isn't denying the money." "What is he saying?" Rachel's expression hardened. "He's blaming Madison." I stared at her. "For everything?" "Everything." I almost laughed from disbelief. "He convinced her to invest our wedding savings." "I know. He lied to her for months." "I know. And now he's sacrificing her." Rachel folded her arms. "People like Tyler don't stay loyal when they're cornered." The interview lasted nearly 2 hours. When Madison finally walked out, her face was pale. She looked as though she hadn't slept in days. She saw me standing near the exit. "Logan." I waited. Her voice trembled. She struggled to continue. "He said I planned everything." I remained silent. "He told them I begged him to hide the money." She covered her face with both hands. "I trusted him." I spoke gently. "I know. I defended him. I know. I destroyed us." She began crying. "For someone who never cared about me." The words echoed through the hallway. For the first time since all of this began, I believed she truly understood. Not because she had been caught, because the illusion had finally shattered. 2 weeks later, the department held a public disciplinary hearing. Officers filled the room. Reporters lined the back wall. Community members watched quietly. Captain Rachel chaired the proceedings. Tyler sat between 2 investigators. Madison sat several seats away, staring at the table. Rachel addressed the room. "This hearing concerns allegations of corruption, bribery, abuse of authority, and professional misconduct." Evidence appeared on a large screen. Bank transfers, phone records, security footage, witness statements. Each document added another piece to the truth. Finally, Rachel looked toward me. "Mr. Carter." I stood and walked to the front. She nodded. "You requested permission to make a statement." I did. The room became silent. I looked at Madison, then at everyone else. "My name is Logan Carter. My fiancée believed I suffered a serious motorcycle accident." I paused. The accident happened. I looked down briefly, but the injury didn't. Confused whispers spread through the audience. I continued. "My broken leg was never real." Complete silence. I asked my best friend, Dr. Noah Bennett, to help me fake the cast. Several officers exchanged shocked looks. I didn't do it to manipulate anyone. I swallowed hard. I did it because I wanted to know something before my wedding. I looked directly at Madison. I wanted to know whether the woman I loved would stay beside me during what she believed was my weakest moment. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I wasn't testing medicine. I was testing love. My voice grew quieter. And she failed. Madison covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't need expensive gifts. I didn't need perfect words. I only needed the person who promised to spend her life with me, to sit beside my hospital bed. I shook my head slowly. Instead, I looked at Tyler. She chose someone else. The silence became overwhelming. Madison stood suddenly. I'm sorry. Her voice broke. So sorry. She looked at me through tears. I kept telling myself I was helping him. She cried harder. I never realized I was abandoning you. I nodded sadly. I know. Two uniformed officers approached Tyler. He immediately stood. This is ridiculous. One officer took hold of his wrist. Tyler Ross, you're under arrest for corruption, bribery, fraud, and related offenses. You can't prove. The investigator interrupted. We already did. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. He looked desperately toward Madison. She didn't move. She didn't defend him. She simply turned away. As officers led him from the room, every excuse he had ever used disappeared with him. The hearing ended in complete silence. I walked outside into the afternoon sunlight. Noah waited near the entrance. How do you feel? I took a slow breath. Lighter. Because he's arrested? I shook my head. No. Because I finally stopped carrying the weight of someone else's choices. For the first time in months, I walked forward without pretending, without doubts, and without looking back. The cast had come off weeks ago. Now, at last, so had the illusion that love could survive where loyalty never existed. 3 months passed before I saw Madison again. By then, my life no longer revolved around questions that had no good answers. Tyler had pleaded guilty to multiple corruption charges. The department had implemented new oversight policies after the investigation. Captain Rachel Stone had been promoted for her leadership during the crisis. As for me, I had stopped measuring my future by what I had lost. One quiet Saturday afternoon, I was helping Noah organize supplies at his rehabilitation clinic when my phone buzzed. Can we talk one last time? The message came from Madison. I stared at it for a long moment. No one noticed. I nodded. You don't have to answer. I know. He waited patiently while I thought. Finally, I replied with a simple message. One conversation. That evening, I met Madison at a small park overlooking the river. The wind carried the first hints of autumn. She was already sitting on a bench when I arrived. For a second, I barely recognized her. The police uniform was gone. She wore simple jeans and a light sweater. No badge. No duty belt. No confidence hiding behind authority. She stood as I approached. Thank you for coming. I said I would. She nodded quietly. I resigned. I heard. She looked toward the river. I couldn't wear the uniform anymore. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, she took a deep breath. I've replayed everything 1,000 times. I believe you. I kept wondering where everything started falling apart. She laughed softly, but there was no joy in it. I used to think it was Tyler. She shook her head. It wasn't. I listened without interrupting. It started the day I stopped choosing us. A tear rolled down her cheek. I just didn't notice. She looked directly at me. I destroyed the person who loved me most. I answered honestly. You hurt me. I know. I broke your trust. You did. She lowered her eyes. I'm sorry, Logan. The apology sounded different from the one she had given before. There were no excuses. No attempts to blame Tyler. No explanations about work. Just acceptance. I know you are. She wiped her face. I don't expect forgiveness. I smiled gently. You already have it. She looked surprised. You forgive me? I decided to forgive you a long time ago. She swallowed hard. Then, hope flickered across her face. Could we ever start over? I took a slow breath. This was a question I had known would come. The hardest part wasn't pretending to have a broken leg. She waited quietly. It was realizing I never truly needed the cast to see the truth. She closed her eyes. I understand. I think part of me already knew something was wrong. I looked out across the water. I just wasn't ready to admit it. She whispered, I wish I had been. So do I. I reached into my jacket pocket. For months, I had carried something without knowing exactly why. Now I understood. I placed a small velvet box in her hands. She opened it slowly. Inside rested the engagement ring she had once given me. Her fingers trembled. I thought you threw this away. I couldn't. I smiled sadly. But I don't need to keep it anymore. She stared at the ring through tears. I don't deserve it. It isn't about deserving. I gently closed the box. It's about letting go. She nodded. I'll keep it. Do whatever helps you heal. She looked at me one last time. I really did love you. I know. I was just too selfish to show it. Neither of us argued. Some truths didn't need debating. She stepped closer. Goodbye, Logan. Goodbye, Madison. She turned and slowly walked away. This time, I didn't watch with heartbreak. I watched with peace. When she disappeared beyond the trees, I realized something surprising. I felt lighter. Not because she had suffered. Not because I had been proven right. Because I was finally free. The following Monday, Noah handed me a volunteer badge. You ready? I clipped it onto my shirt. As ready as I'll ever be. The rehabilitation center welcomed patients recovering from serious accidents, surgeries, and life-changing injuries. Some struggled to walk again. Others feared they never would. I spent hours talking with them, listening, encouraging, sometimes simply sitting beside someone who felt alone. One elderly man laughed after finishing his first successful walk across the therapy room. I never thought I'd make it. You just did. A teenage motorcycle accident survivor looked at me nervously before beginning physical therapy. I'm scared. So was I. He smiled weakly. What happened to your leg? I laughed quietly. That's a long story. He grinned. I've got time. Maybe someday I'd tell him. Maybe not. Emma Collins occasionally visited the rehabilitation center with patients transferred from the hospital. When she saw me volunteering, she smiled warmly. I had a feeling you'd end up helping people. What makes you say that? You were never bitter. She adjusted a patient's wheelchair. You were just hurt. I thought about her words long after she left. There was a difference. Pain could become bitterness, or it could become compassion. The choice belonged to me. One evening, after the last patient had gone home, Noah and I stood outside the clinic watching the sunset. You know, he said, most people would call your fake injury a terrible idea. I laughed. They'd probably be right. And yet, he looked at the building behind us. It led you here. I smiled. It did. The cast had been fake. The heartbreak had not. Neither had the lessons. I had pretended to be injured to discover whether love would stay beside me. Instead, I discovered that self-respect begins the moment we stop begging people to care. I forgave Madison because carrying resentment would only keep me trapped in a story that had already ended. I found purpose because pain, when faced honestly, can become something greater than suffering. As I walked toward my car beneath the fading light, I realized the greatest healing had never been about a leg that was never broken. It had been about a heart that finally learned to walk forward without looking back.